The bad tides are coming, and right now, we're not ready for them. This is the settlement of new beginnings. We've survived 3 cycles, built up a stable supply of food and water, and even started industrializing with planks and gears. But there's a problem. When a bad tide hits, the river turns toxic, water becomes undrinkable, crops start dying, and beavers that touch it can get sick, which puts pressure on every part of the system. So in this episode, I need to fix that by building a system that can survive bad tides, control the water, and keep the settlement running no matter what. So what we're working with here is actually 2 sources of water. So that's like the real challenge that's involved here. We have the source that's over here, tucked away, and the source that is over here. Now, in other maps, you have one clear, distinct source, so it's easy to pinpoint the problem and block it off and redirect it as you please. But here, because there's 2 and they diverge in this spot, it makes it a little interesting to figure out. There isn't a very clear path for diverting it per se, but the method I'm going to use is going to involve this little piece of terrain here to direct the water towards this bad tide creek that's hidden away over here. It gets a little messy though, so I'm gonna need to levy off an entire segment here, I believe, to really keep things contained. Alrighty, but that's enough yapping for now. Let's get started. The first step was building a line of floodgates to give me control over the source of the river, so I started putting that together. Alright, so I have the floodgates complete here, and I'm noticing something as I'm building here. I actually think that there is some value in damming off this section here in order to get some water reserved for this case of a drought here. So there's all the water dried up here, and it's affecting the berry bushes over here, which I'm not terribly worried about the berry bushes, but it does pose a problem if I do spread my agriculture into this part of the map. So I think it's going to be valuable to build a dam here as well. Alright, so I actually did some thinking, and I actually am changing my mind. I think this needs to be a double floodgate to achieve exactly how I want to control the water level. Because as we see, this is only 1 block high. So if this is also 1 block high and it starts spilling over, it still risks spilling over here. So I'm going to tear these down and start again. Well, as it stands, the droughts aren't terribly affecting the settlement right now. It was pretty good. It was only a few days long, but I'm not sure how long this settlement lasts in a long-term drought, so I'm gonna have to make some adjustments as we go. Alright, so we have the floodgates complete. So I'd like to test out exactly what's going to happen here when I completely shut it. I already saw that some flooding will happen back in this direction, but with it fully blocked off here, I'd like to see how the water behaves. Okay, I can see that this is pretty messy as it goes into these areas here, fills up this hole here as well. But ultimately, the water is going where I want it to go. So as you can see here, I'm gonna need some levees to keep this under control. Uh-oh. The more astute of you may have noticed I built a lever here. And this is just going to make things much more streamlined and easy to operate these floodgates. So what we're going to do is we're going to press automate. I'm going to hit the lever. And what we have here is when it's off, it's at the height of 0.65 meters. But when it goes to the on position, it is going to be at the full closed position of 2 meters. So we can test that now. Alright, this is much easier than just going into these controls and adjusting it manually. I'm a big fan of the lever. You can even hotkey it to your keyboard too if you'd like, which is really nice, but I'm just going to leave it. And so that I don't forget about what this lever does when I'm in the automate menu, I'm going to put this as Badtides switch. Okay, and now I'd like to work on separating this area so it's not quite as messy when I block it off. Okay, I have what I believe is gonna be good enough. It's not the prettiest, but I think this should work just fine. Now, what I'm noticing is construction projects are taking a little longer than I would like, so I think now is a good time to consider expanding the population while also making sure that I have the means to support population growth. I already started some additional water tanks, and that should help with making sure I have water to support it, but now it's time to think about also expanding storage for food, as we're getting backed up in grilled potatoes, backed up on carrots, so let's look at our options here. I believe I have the means, I have the science points, and I have the materials to start building large warehouses. So I think I'm going to upgrade to that. It seems like a nice natural progression here. Question is, I can probably just outright replace this medium warehouse. And I'm going to do that. We're going to set this to maximum priority here, and we're going to build that and fill it up with lots of grilled potatoes. Alright, wonderful. So now we have a large warehouse that can store grilled potatoes, and this is going to store 1,200, as opposed to the medium warehouse that stores only 200, so that is 6 times the amount of potatoes in barely a larger footprint here. Now the next step is to start expanding our residential area. And I'm trying to think of where I want to put that. Ultimately, I decided on moving upward. There was a lot of extra dead birch trees up here, so I went ahead and put a lumberjack flag and cut them all down. Alright, it looks like we have another drought approaching, so we'll be able to test our resources now and see how far we can go in this next drought. What I have ultimately decided here is an upper level section, and I'm going to be able to do something kind of neat here with the actual ledge here, and it's going to let me grow the population pretty quickly with less buildings, and it's also going to work really well with this side as well. Until I get some explosives, I won't be able to build much on this side. But that's okay. I'm not gonna be worrying about that now because I'm gonna get a lot of beavers out of this area right here. All right, we've entered our 4th drought now, and this one is going to be 5 days long, so we'll see how the settlement handles a 5-day long drought. It should be fine. It's not that devastating at the moment. All right, just needs 2 more logs, and my diversion system will be completed. And just as like a couple cleanups, I'm going to put 2 levees here. It's not necessary, but it'll look pretty. I often don't like these diagonal connections, so I always try to fill them in. After we complete this levee system here, I would like to move my dam to where the water naturally drops off here. I think that is a better place for the dam here. It also keeps these trees watered. So that is my next step in getting the system working properly. And then I can tear down this dam here and then just put a path that goes directly through the water. Which might make more sense if I do it here. So that was a nice, clean, straight line, and is nice and structured. Oh no, I just really like clean, squared, grid-like infrastructure. A slave to the grid. As I was working on this new dam, my original Badtide diversion project finally finished. Now let's take a look at the final product. With that out of the way, the next step is to simply wait for the Badtide. While I'm waiting for that to happen, I plan on expanding my residential area, as it's about that time to increase the population. Alright, so we're setting up this new residential area for the beavers, and I think it's coming together quite well. We have the decorations here in the center with the fire pit, which gives them an area for some well-deserved rest and relaxation. But the big important part here is I'm going to be utilizing the double lodge, which holds 6 beavers versus the typical 3 that you get with the standard lodge. Now, I've decided to sprinkle in a few warehouses for food here as, like, quick bites to eat if they're in their home sleeping and they happen to get hungry. So hopefully this kind of streamlines their food and drinking habits. As you can see, this setup I have here allows me to add a lot of extra beds, which will provide adequate space for more beavers. And this setup also allows me to expand pretty naturally with adding more houses. And it doesn't feel too out of place when I put normal lodges here versus the double lodges here. The terrain almost hides the bottom portion of it, and it's a really clever use of the elevation here. I'm really quite fond of it. Meanwhile, over at the new dam project, it looks like the beavers are about to finish it. Alright, with this second dam built, I can break down this dam here as it's no longer necessary. It was our first dam, but we have since improved. Now, what this dam here is going to provide is an extension of what we already had. There was a little bit of a gap here which dried up during times of drought, and this is going to store more water overall, so it increases the time it takes for the water to evaporate, and it increases the overall volume in general, so our water pumps can continue to work even when the water sources go dry. All right, the whole reason I wanted to expand my population was in order to get the builder's hut. And this is going to allow me to have more builders available to tackle bigger projects. Because right now we only have 4 builders, and they serve as both like a hybrid hauler builder kind of unit. So having dedicated builders which have the only job of building will help streamline my build projects a little bit faster. So let's find a nice home for it. I have nothing really planned for this area, so I think this will be a little place for it for now. I don't know if it'll be permanent, but it'll work for now. I'm not a big fan of the placement at the moment because it's a really pretty building, but it gets blocked off by everything back here, so it's definitely not a permanent spot for it. Just temporary for now until I can conjure up a good place to put it. All right, the drought has started once again, so we'll be able to see how this new system performs here. Now, I've been thinking that in the event of a bad tide, I really don't want this little lake pond thing to get full of bad water, because it's going to be a pain in the ass to clean up. So what I think I'm going to do here is just start planning on trying to levy it off so that I don't have to worry about it in the future. So I'm going to work on that during this drought. And as you can see, we're seeing the direct result of the builder's hut, with many more builders able to expedite tasks a lot faster now. And we are about halfway through the, well, past halfway through this drought, and as you can see, the dam system right now is working quite well. Unfortunately, the water wheels don't function during the drought, but the land stays irrigated, and I think that's a more pressing issue than my plank and gear production right now, so I'm happy with how this turned out. Checking back in, it looks like the water did end up drying up on the last day of the drought, which means this is an additional problem to address for the next coming drought. All right, so now that the lake is contained here, we don't have to worry about draining all the bad water out if it leaks into it now. So that is a more comforting thought as we await the bad tide to hit the settlement now. Now, while we're waiting for this bad time to happen, I think I should take this moment to work on decorations and try to get some more bonuses from decorating. decided I think I know of a way to expand the food supply. It's going to require a forester, so I'm going to build that really quick. It's going to be a temporary forester, though, so... we'll get that started. Now, what I plan on doing here is removing these blueberry bushes and replacing them with chestnut trees. And what that's going to provide is another grilled food source to complement the potatoes. Now, we already have this harvester flag here, and we can pretty much just convert them into a chestnut harvester, as the blueberries are kind of just sitting here for a while. There's not really much use for them at the moment, so as a good emergency backup, they're there, but they don't really do anything, and they're not like the greatest food source. So I think replacing the blueberry bushes with chestnut trees is going to do great. All right, there it is. The bad tide is approaching. I have 3 days to prepare. The reason this isn't getting contaminated... the bad tide has started. All right. Let's test this out now. It is a 1-day bad tide, so... not going to last that long, but we get to test this. Beautiful. All right, now we just have to wait for the bad water to kind of filter out here. Shouldn't take that long with the water sources coming back now. I was worried about this issue over here with the oak trees dying off, because I didn't realize it at first, but the fresh water source was actually preventing contamination from hitting the soil on this side. When we had a bad tide, that fresh water was no longer creating a little barrier for the soil here, so during the bad tide, these trees died. But luckily they were fully grown already, so they can still be used for wood. And it looks like it didn't contaminate that far in to my other trees, so we'll have to worry about that in another episode. Now, it's the middle of the night here, so I'm gonna let the bad water kind of wash out, and I shouldn't have to worry about any beavers getting contaminated because they should all be headed towards their lodging. As I was saying, that is not good. Okay, so created a problem. I did not really think about the... I did not think that the bad water was going to do that when I opened the floodgates. So we're going to have to make some medicine for some beavers. So the final flush of the bad tide didn't exactly go the way I wanted, but that's actually useful. It shows where the system needs work. The core ideas work, but there's definitely some weak points to fix. So next, I want to refine this. I want to expand my reservoir to prevent future drought issues and improve controlling the bad tide a bit better. But for now, that's a good place to stop for today. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see how this develops, I'll be continuing this in the next episode.